Hey friends, today I'm going to read another true story, but this time it's not about war. It's about a woman that was born into slavery. Her name was Mary Walker, and it's really pretty amazing. Let me tell you a little bit about her before I read the story. So she was born in 1848, May the 6th, 1848, and she was born a slave. And as a small child, up until she was 15, she worked as a slave. She cleaned houses, she picked cotton and other fruits and vegetables, and she also worked as a blacksmith, and she was treated very badly. When she was 15, she became free. When she was 20, she got married and had a baby. When she was 68, she was still working and raising money for her church. When she was 114 years old, she was the last person still alive in her family. And then when she was 116 years old, she learned how to read. Isn't that amazing? Here's some real pictures of her. Let me tell you just a little bit more about her from the back of the book. It says that in 1963, unfortunately, one of her sons died, and so she decided at that point that she wanted to learn how to read. She had never learned how to read her whole life. She didn't know how to read. So she was 114 at that time. So she took lessons, and she learned how to read and write and add and subtract. And she died when she was 121 years old on December 1st, 1969. Isn't that incredible? So think about it. She was born in 1848 during the time of slavery, and she died in 1969 when I was 7 years old. That's just the most incredible thing. So she lived through 26 different presidents. Pretty amazing. So let's learn a little bit about her life and how she learned to read. So the oldest student, how Mary Walker learned to read. The author's name is Rita Lorraine Hubbard, and the illustrator is Oge Mora. And we actually have a book by her that we've read before, I believe. Really nice pictures. It looks like she uses a lot of collage, which I love. Whenever young Mary Walker was tired, she would shield her eyes from the sun and watch the swallowtail kites dip and soar above the trees. This must be what it's like to be free, she thought. But Mary didn't watch for long. Even at only 8 years old, she knew the first rule of the Union Springs, Alabama plantation she lived on: keep working. She knew the second rule too: slaves should not be taught to read or write or do anything that might help them learn to do so. Mary didn't stop working, and she didn't learn to read or write either. But at the end of each long day, picking cotton, toting water to Papa and the other slaves who chopped wood for the train tracks, or helping Mama clean the big house, she would lie in her little bed next to the crumbling fireplace and think about those birds. When I'm free, I'll go wherever I want and rest when I want, and I'll learn to read too. Think about her being 8 years old and not being able to do anything she wanted to do. She had to do exactly what she was told, and she had to work really, really hard, just like an adult. When she was 15, it happened. Mary and her mother, brothers, and sister were free. The Emancipation Proclamation said so. What it didn't say was how a family with nothing except the tattered garments on their backs could find food, clothes, and a place to sleep. Mary's father had died, and the family was on its own. Freedom Road to Freedom Road. Across fields and through the woods, ex-slaves surged like waves crashing hard to shore. Now that they were free, every road was Freedom Road. Many headed north and the west and every which way, searching for long-lost family members or simply experiencing the wonder of being free. So think about it. That's right, she's free, but they don't have any money. They don't have anything they can do. They can't read or write. How are they going to live? Others, like Mary, chose to stay in the South. An organization called the Freedmen's Bureau helped those who stayed to find shelter on abandoned Confederate land. Mary and her family settled in a one-room cabin, and for the next few years she worked alongside her mama to help feed her siblings. 7 days a week she churned butter, cleaned houses, and cared for other folks' children. The hours were long, and if Mary were thirsty or hungry or needed to use the outhouse, she had to wait until she got home. At week's end, she would offer Mama the one lonely quarter she had earned. So she worked 7 days a week. She wasn't allowed to eat or drink anything at work or even use the bathroom. And when she got home at the end of that long week, she only had a quarter. One day, Mama met a group of evangelists on the roadside. A woman with soft wrinkles in her kindly face placed a big, beautiful Bible in Mama's hands and told her, Your civil rights are in these pages." Mary didn't know what civil rights were. She only knew that the top to bottom, front to back, the book was filled with words. "I'm going to learn to read these words," she vowed, "but not today. Today there is work to be done." The civil rights are the things that you are able to do, which is like be free and do what you want to do. And tomorrow, too. When Mary got married, she and her husband worked as sharecroppers, renting someone else's house and using someone else's tools and planting someone else's seeds to farm land they would never own. After they harvested the crops, almost all the money they earned went to pay for the house, the tool, and the seed cost. Mary was 20 years old when her first son was born. She opened her Bible and marveled at the squiggles inside. They had no time to learn to read. A friend wrote Mary's son's birth date in the Bible, August 26, 1869. Then Mary dipped a pen into the inkwell and made her mark beside it. Not a letter, not a name, just a mark. It was the best she could do. Think of how hard life would be if you couldn't read or write. One day, Mary's husband died. She married again, and a second son was born, then a third. Mary made marks for these sons too. Now she had 3 growing boys. More money, that's what we need, Mary thought. But the only other jobs available to black women were as maids or nannies or cooks. The hours were long, with only half a day off on Saturdays, and like sharecropping, they didn't pay much. Mary sighed. Words would have to wait. For the next 4 decades, that's 40 years, Mary sharecropped and did odd jobs to help support her family. In 1917, Mary's family moved to the little city of Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was a year of Chattanooga's great flood. The story was in all the newspapers, but Mary could only study the pictures to understand what had happened. I like the illustrations in this book a lot. By now, Mary was 68 and too old to sharecrop, but she continued to work, cooking, cleaning, and babysitting. She also fried fish, baked cakes, and sold sandwiches to raise money for her church. On Sundays, she would sit in the congregation. As the preacher spoke, she would clutch her family Bible, the Bible she still couldn't read. When Mary was well past 90, she and her husband sat in their creaky rocking chairs while one or another of their sons read to them. After the 2 older boys died, the eldest read. Then Mary's husband died. Several years later, her eldest son died, too. He was 94. He was 94 when he died. His mom was still alive. I mean, that's incredible. Mary had outlived her entire family. She was 114 years old and all alone. "Can't read," she said. "Can't ride. I don't know anything." Mary stood at the window of her retirement home and gazed down at the world below. Words were everywhere, on billboards, on buildings, on store windows, on trucks. She sighed. All this time, she thought, and they still look like squiggles. So she's 114 years old, and she's still really sad that she doesn't know how to read. Mary had heard about a new reading class held in her building. She pursed her lips. No more waiting, she decided. Time to learn. Out of her apartment, into an elevator, and down to the lobby she went. When the elevator door sprang open, Mary saw people sitting under a sign with a picture of an open book. She could not read the words. A neighbor walked up to her. "That's the reading class, Miss Mary. Can I help you over?" Mary shook her head. Then she gripped her cane, lifted her chin, and walked straight toward the sign. She's 114 years old. Isn't that incredible? Very few people live to be that old. And if they do, I don't know if they're at the place where they can learn to read. For the next year and more, Mary put everything she had into learning to read. It wasn't easy, after all. She was the oldest student in the class, and probably in the entire country. Could someone her age learn to read? She didn't know, but by God, she was going to try. She studied the alphabet until her eyes watered. She memorized the sounds each letter made and practiced writing her name so many times that her fingers cramped. She learned to recognize sight words and then challenged herself to make short sentences with them. She studied and studied until books and pages and letters and words twirled in her head while she slept. So here she is practicing her name. Can you see it? One fine day, Mary's hard work paid off. She could read. Word of her accomplishment traveled, and people everywhere celebrated with her. Chattanooga's mayor, newspaper journalists across the country, and a man from the U.S. Department of Education who said, "Miss Mary Walker, I pronounce you the nation's oldest student," all shared her joy. The sad thing is everybody's so happy for her, but nobody from her family is there because all her sons got old and died. Her husband got old and died, so she doesn't have anybody in her family to share this joy with. Mary felt complete. She still missed her sons, but whenever she was lonely, she read from her Bible and looked out her window and read the words in the street below. From then on, Chattanooga honored Mary's achievement with yearly birthday parties. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson sent her well wishes on Mary's 118th birthday, and in 1969, President Richard Nixon did the same. Mary was now 121 years old. Isn't that incredible? 121 years old. And she's not even in bad health. She's 121, but she can still walk. She still bakes cakes. Mary received many gifts over the years: a radio, a sofa, her very first television, a new Bible, and the key to the city, and perfume and champagne from the Canadian Mounties. Those are the police officers in Canada. She also received something that brought back those long days in the Alabama cotton fields, her first airplane ride. From the cockpit window, Mary gazed at the trees and the rooftops below. No different than a horse and a buggy ride, she joked, but she knew it was. As the airplane dipped and soared like those swallow-tailed kites of long ago, Mary decided that flying was a lot like reading. They both made a body feel as free as a bird. So look, there she is. So someone took her up in the plane and gave her a flight for the first time. Each year, before her birthday celebration came to an end, someone would whisper, "Let's listen to Miss Mary." The shuffling and movement would fade away until not a word was sound. Then Mary would stand on her old legs, clear her old throat, and read from her Bible or her school book in a voice that was strong and clear. When she finished, she would gently close her book and say, "You're never too old to learn." Here she is. So this is some of the information that I told you before I read the story. And here's some more. I guess these are the same pictures ever, but here she is reading. Pretty amazing to think that she was born a slave and she lived to be 121. And she had a dream. She had things to do that prevented her from fulfilling her dream, but finally, when she was 114 years old, 116 years old, she learned to read, and then she died when she was 121. Pretty amazing. So tell me what you think, friends. Happy reading.